Good morning, traders. It's 8 a.m. Chicago time on Tuesday, the 23rd of January, 2024. This is episode number 2608. Thanks for joining me. I want to remind you that derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. So, we are up here at all-time highs, or at least above last year's highs. All-time highs are farther up at 50, 30, 250, I believe is the number. Hopefully sound is good this morning. Let's take a look at the overall picture. Like what is setting up for us using this convergent trading pre-market summary sheet. A reminder, Convergence running its Trade Right promotion through the end of the month. Those of you who didn't attend last week's webinar, I really encourage you to go check that out. The recording's up. It's on YouTube. You don't have to disclose who you are. We're not asking for information. But you can go, you can point your browser at some point today when things slow down and you need something to listen to. You can check out go to ct.pro/preparation. Although that is misspelled, let's fix that. Preparation. Preparation. This walks you through the process of basically what we go over in this Trader Bite. Yeah, go check that out. So what do we have here? Markets completely imbalanced across the board, really. The overall posture overnight's mixed. We're seeing a pop in the Russell. If you remember, the Russell really took a kick to the teeth over the last couple weeks and has come back, is coming back. But overall, we're seeing crude off. We're seeing crypto off. Crypto, here's what's happening here. We'll use Bitstamp's quote today. You could see that it's come off quite a bit from the high of 49,000, and it's coming. It dropped through 40,000. We expect some support here in the 40 to 42,000, and it looks like it's heading towards 36. Actually, 32 is the number. 32,000 technically. Who knows what's going on? What's going on in terms of all that ETF and all that? Everybody thought the ETF is going to make this thing pop, but every time there's news on Bitcoin, it just sells. It sells and sells and sells. If you recall, when the futures came out, everybody was like, "Oh my God, this thing is going to rip higher," and it ended up. Basically being the top when the futures came out. So Bitcoin and Ether way off today. Ether taking a nice little beating here. This morning we did get some key earnings this week. It's a heavy earnings week. Verizon came out and pretty much in line, $1.08 versus $1.07. Procter and Gamble beat by 8%, $1.84 versus $1.70. Johnson & Johnson came out at $2.29 versus $2.28. Raytheon, which should be killing it with all these wars, is at $1.29 versus $1.24. They sold 19.824 billion in Q4. Lockheed Martin came out at $7.90, $7 versus $7.26, beat by 8.82% on approximately 18.8 billion. And then General Electric, the Goliath, is at $1.03 versus 91 cents, beating by 13%. Picard beaten by 21%. 3M beating by 4%. So you get the gist of this. Quite a bit of beating. So there's that. After the close, Halliburton was a part of this. Halliburton beat by 7.5%, came in at 86 cents versus 80 cents. After the close, we do get Netflix. Netflix expected at $2.22 on 8.719 billion. Look out for that. Baker Hughes, Steel Dynamics, and Texas Instruments. Those of you who remember those calculators from engineering school, couldn't live without those things. What are the overall themes? China again came out saying that they're going to be taking some steps to bolster the market, their market. It's been struggling, but this we've seen this theme again and again. Every time there's a sell-off in the markets in China, the government comes in and says they're going to take action to help support it. Japan had its BOJ decision yesterday. They left rates unchanged. Generally, traders anticipate that the BOJ is going to tighten. Haven't seen that yet. Reminder that the Fed is in a quiet period, and so is the ECB. The ECB has its rate decision this Thursday. United Airlines reported yesterday, and it beat. Again, ECB this Thursday and heavy earnings week, so we have a lot to price in this week. In terms of what's ahead, I mean, we did get a couple of numbers this morning, nothing to speak of, but ahead of us we have consumer confidence out of the Eurozone at 10. We have consumer confidence out of Korea at 4 p.m. We have the crude oil stock change at 4:30, and then the big one is the balance of trade for Japan at 6:50 p.m. Very light calendar today, so I'm expecting overall, given that we're pushing all-time highs, given that we went to almost 4,900 in the yesterday's session and have pulled back a little bit, I'm expecting this to be a snoozer. And the range is already telling us that when we look at the overnight status of the ES, we see that only 158,000 contracts traded. Remember, yesterday it was around 2. By the time we opened, it was 280,000. So 158,000, quite light, very light. The inventory is quite balanced at plus 16%. The range is pretty poor at 14.5%. The point of control remaining at 48.82. Yesterday's point of control and settlement were at this price. So it's just not looking good for today in terms of pop and fizzle and fireworks. There's just not we're just not seeing it now. Just remember, balance leads to imbalance, right? Which leads to balance, and we're balanced. So what that means is look out. You know, we still we're not gonna be off our guard, because this might set up the next break. Here's what I talked about last Friday. And the reason I'm bringing you back to last Friday is not to show you that I was right or anything like that. It's really to reinforce what we're doing here, which is to follow the auction. And if you recall last Friday, if you were here, the overnight session had pushed through our all-important 39 and a quarter high of year last year, and it broke that by going to 41 and a quarter. So what we said all of last week is that if we push to 15, and if the 15, which is the high volume node in this area, the most accepted price in this region, if that resists and falls off, that's an important indication to look for 4804, and then it trickles down into 4794, 92, and then we're very likely to push 4720. If it holds, if it tests and falls off. If it tests and pushes through, then look for a pullback to the 15 and a run up. And that's what we covered last Friday. That was the main scenario last Friday's. It's very likely to break through the VWAP on the open because it's been a runner. The inventory is very, very, very positive that day. The expectation is a pullback to 48.15-ish. Remember, when we bring up a number, we're not looking for the exact number. We're looking for a zone. And then the idea is that we are very likely to crack last year's high, right? Prior high of year, PHOY. And we are likely to push to where the number that I've been talking about is the 50 as the key figure. So I didn't do a trader bite yesterday. Unfortunately, I had little kitties to take care of, um, bring them to school and stuff. It conflicts with the timing. But what I was going to cover yesterday is just that. If you look at what happened last Friday, you will see that the low is 48.15. Now, that makes me a genius. I have the inside secrets of how banks and hedge funds operate and how the liquidity pools get worked and how the stops get run and how the market works entirely, and I'm giving this to you for free, so please tell your friends to follow me. No, that's not what I'm doing. All I'm doing is reinforce the same thing I've been reinforcing forever now for since 2011 or 12 of these trader bites, is to say the auction is what governs here. And we don't know what the liquidity and the banks and the hedge funds and the algos and all this stuff are going to do, but we know that there are rules to this jungle, right? This jungle operates in a certain way. Um, there is a circle of life. If you need study material for that, I highly recommend the movie The Lion King, the original, not the remake. Sorry, I'm feeling giddy. I slept really well and had an amazing workout today. Crushed a 6K in record time this morning, so I'm just like burning up with energy. Um, but the idea is to tell you that it came back to 48.15. Yes, that's pretty accurate, but that's not what we're after. We're looking to see how it treats it. So it held the 48.15, pushed through, breaks the IB high, and we're in it was an open auction out of range that pulled back through the 17 to fill the gap, but it pushed to the 48.15. And then it busted through, and we had a very choppy morning. It busted through, and off to the races we go. And what it did last Friday is it left very poor structure yet again, all the way down to 48.42, something like that. Pretty poor structure. Didn't auction very well, but what it actually accomplished is it took out that 39.75 or quarter or whatever it was, right? So this is exactly what we had been talking about for the last week and a half. I think I was still in Colombia when I was discussing this, so 2 weeks ago. So check, 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 check. Everything checks out, and we're up against the next big figure, which is 4,900. So the market goes double O's. It's called the century, the 50, mid-century, double O. Excuse me 1 second. And and what it does is actually the big strikes in this product are 25 points apart. We tend to get sticky in these areas. Um, we tend to get sticky in these areas, and that's what we saw yesterday. Yesterday we opened out of range. We auctioned up to within 7 ticks of the 4,900, and then we extended out as soon as we crossed the VWAP yesterday, really looking short side only, and it ended up filling the gap pretty much accurately by 3 ticks. The yesterday's low 73.50, Friday's high 74 and a quarter. Didn't quite tag the settlement of Friday, the settlement of last week, so that remains on deck in the cards. So what did it accomplish yesterday? It created a P-shaped profile. We did not have an excess at the high. What did it do at the high yesterday? Do you recall? We had A period. Okay, so we'll call this A period. I'm not going to repeat the letter. Then B period came along. It opened somewhere up high on A period, and it went and it ticked, just one tick above A period, and that's not what's important. That's an important indication, but that's not what's important. What's important is what happens next. If it one ticks, pulls back, consolidates, and pushes through, you don't have a failed auction. But if it one ticks and it comes back and it's just unable to go back and recheck and take out that tick, we end up pushing lower. The A bracket low is toast because that's the IB low. And in this situation was the IB low, but B bracket might extend down and make the IB that way. So once the one tick failed auction showed up, um, as a trader, you want to make sure that you stay off the long side. Okay, so let's take a look at that in closer fashion here. Here's yesterday. Here's yesterday. So there we had, a market that opened. We had a pretty balanced overnight session, just chop, 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 chop. And then it opens and it looks directional. It looks directional, pulls back to RTH VWAP, RTH mid, lower high. So we don't take it on the second, we take it on the first if we can. Don't take it on the second. We don't reuse a tissue. We only use it once. And then it pushed to the high, and then it rechecked the high at 9 o'clock before it fell below the VWAP, went to full session VWAP. So there's still an opportunity for this thing to consolidate and squeeze, but as soon as it crossed here, as soon as it fell through, now we're looking for, you had a little jiggle, little two-step, little move, little basketball fake out here. And then it sold off. You had another shot at this at the VWAP again in congruence with these levels, and then it just continued lower and lower, back to the open, lower, and so on. And then from there, it just basically sat at the low end of the range. We ended up with this kind of multi-distribution or double distribution profile, but what we end up with in the profile is something very clean and clear. Right? So here's the profile, and you could see A period. Well, let's split the profile, which I'd like to do. I like to look at split profiles. So you can see A period opened here, little test down, and then shoots up. B period opens, and it goes one tick above, and it ends up moving all the way down to here where C period starts. And as soon as that B period low gets taken after a one tick failed auction, boom, you're trading on the short side, and that's the side you want to stay on. Okay, so this high was tested and rejected. Normally, if it's two TPOs at the high or if it's high volume at the high, we call that a weak high. But because we saw that it checked and it found sellers and the sellers managed to squeeze, this is not a weak high. This is not a weak high, but at the same time, we don't have a single letter, single prints at the top, so that's not an excess either. So it's just a temporary failure from buyers to push. We finished with a double TPO high, so you'd want to keep an eye on what goes on at 48.88 in the overnight session, but then the overnight session really didn't do anything with that. So let's take a look. The overnight session, we'd expect some sort of, as you can see here, top, local double top there. We'd expect some sort of a stop run here. Didn't really do it. We did have an interesting push. I'll show you this in the relative delta screen. You could see these bubbles coming in, and you could see that there's a bit of a spike there. There was a bit of a spike there, but it's just such poor action in the overnight session. You look at the shape of that cumulative delta, since the open, and it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Small lots are dominant. The market's following mostly what the small lots are doing, which is the orange dashed line, and that's what really is controlling cumulative delta. So it's just a bunch of traders, day traders, clobbering each other today, and I don't want to participate in that. So to me, the market has to move away pretty aggressively for me to step into this and participate. So just pay attention to these little clues that we're getting. So where are we really? So what we've done is we've taken out the 48. These are off by about 2.5 points. It's really 48.63 and a half, and the all-time high is 50.32 something. John, can you back me up here? I don't remember what the all-time high is. It's been a while. It's like 50.32.50, I think, something like that. That's the all-time high. The problem here, the reason the data is off and it's acceptable that it's off is because it's not using settlement to roll. It's using the close, and those are not the same thing. The technically accurate way to do it is to use a settlement. But we're a long ways from that, so we've taken out the 48.63, and then what's next is the 49.64. 49.64. That's the next big area. Other than that, when you go back and you look at the template days, which are these days back here, there's just nothing here that is outstanding. So I got to say that this is the kind of environment that I don't like, especially in the ES, when just money starts flowing in and it's just buy the dip, and it's a slow grind. The VIX falls out of bed, and it's just an overall boring trade. So let's look at the VIX. Look at that VIX. Ugh, man, this is the daily. It's just really awful. I mean, it's as low as it's gotten since the pandemic kicked in. It's pretty bad. This is the time where I jet and I move to NQ more aggressively, CL more aggressively, potentially if there's still macro considerations, GC as well. I'm not recommending you trade these products, of course. If you're going to trade them, trade the MCL, MNQ, and MGC. They're cash settled and they're smaller, they're less leveraged, and the expectation is the risk and the reward will be lower, but at least you'll stay nimble and continue to participate through the game. So it looks pretty bad. What are we expecting for today? So I can wrap up here. What are we looking for today? Overall, pretty choppy. I expect that it's very likely to remain inside of yesterday's range. My lean is that it is very likely to fall through the full session VWAP and retest the settlement of last Friday. Okay, and so I'm looking for it to lean into 48.70, 48.70. And if it doesn't hold 48.70, where do you think is the next key test? It taps the 48.70, falls through, pulls back, continues. The next test, even though I can't wait for you, the next test is going to have to be that 48.39.75. That's what the next test is. That's last year's high. Test from above, probably pushes through by a few. That's my primary scenario, is that we have found sellers against the 4900 for now, and it's very likely to float its way downwards. But as you can see, the delta here isn't doing diddly squat. It just isn't doing anything. So be patient today. Know what you've got, accept it, and just relax. And wait for the setups to show up. I'll leave you with that. Good luck today, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care.